First, these reports coming that the president has inquired about possibly firing Jay Powell. And then the Treasury Secretary saying while he disagrees with him, he's not planning on firing him. What do you make of all of this? Could the president, first of all, even fire a Fed chair? And what would happen if he did?
So there seems to be some ambiguity about what people think the president can do and what the president thinks he can do. It's my understanding that LBJ tried to do something about the Fed chair in '65 and didn't have the authority, but there's some new questions about whether there are other paths the president could pursue to sideline Powell.
You mean in terms of stripping his seat on the board?
It's so I think it's very easy, or not very. It's less controversial that you could get him to not be the chair, but that he would remain on the board. Getting him off the board entirely, I think, is a heavier lift, is my understanding. I think you also saw sort of a reaction to this. There were some stories late yesterday that that advisors to the president thought he didn't have the authority to do this, and I think they were sort of trying to walk this back because they realized it's very counterproductive. On the minus side, while they were doing that, we had the Mnuchin statement, which was like significantly more counterproductive. So it was not necessarily the best.
You're talking about the Mnuchin statement saying that he spoke with the CEOs of 6 major banks?
Yeah, the everything is fine statement. I think that was probably, the problem is you had other people in the White House who were working to walk back the sort of Powell speculation. And I think they had been, there's a story from like maybe an hour before the Mnuchin statement that obviously didn't get a great deal of coverage. But I think there are people in the White House who recognize that sort of communicating that the president is interested in getting rid of Powell is not a productive strategy.
Do you think that that is a message that resonates throughout next year?
Sorry, that we're worried about the president getting rid of the Fed chair?
Yeah, I mean, we're saying right now that no, he probably wouldn't do that he's been walked back. But do you think that's a message that sticks? Or do you think we're going to be discussing this again a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now?
I mean, I think this is going to be around for a while. It's clearly in the president's head. I mean, I think that there's, frankly, some merit to the idea that the Fed has been a little aggressive in tightening. And I think one of the challenges is that if you were really interested in getting the Fed to stop tightening, you wouldn't be tweeting about it from the White House because the Fed guards its independence pretty seriously. But we seem to be repeating this pattern. We actually saw this up to the last rate hike with the president speculating that markets were not ready for this, and that if you actually look at the real economy, which I assume some of his advisors got him to focus on for a while, that you really didn't see a lot of evidence that we needed a hike in the fall, let alone last week.
Do you think the Fed stops raising rates at this point? Their statement and many of the answers at the press briefing last week were not as dovish as people had anticipated. But what do you think will happen in reality?
Yeah, I actually think that hopefully they remain data dependent. And if you're looking at the labor market or inflation data, there's no reason to believe they need to be tightening rates. I think you run into this risk of when you get the optics of the Fed having stated that they want to be more hawkish and then being challenged by the White House to be less hawkish, it makes it harder for them to back down. And I think that may have played someone into last week.
But you're not anticipating any rate hikes in the next few months, is that safe to say?
Yeah, I think the sort of general expectation is like a late spring and like early summer hike, but I've not looked at the morning probabilities to see how these have moved over the weekend. I would guess that having looked at these last on Friday, that they've probably changed somewhat since then.